What's up, Mongols? We are the Group 1 from BSIT 1C.
John Nelson L. Parungao, C-1.
John Christian Harry Martin, C-2.
John Lorenz Pablo, C-3.
Miko D. Domingo, C-4.
Joshua C. Reguyal, C-5. Hello guys, so for our laboratory exercise number 1, we will create a C++ program that will display our school name and campus. So the first thing we do is to open our CXX droid, and then we clear all of these things so we could start from the scratch. So in first line, we'll have our header file, which includes the functions for input and output operations in C++. So let's now type number include, space, the less than symbol to open our header file name, and then the header file name which is iOS string, and then greater than. Then we press enter. Next, we type again number include, space, less than, and let's put cstdlib. We do this to put simple mathematical functions and other functions. So after we do the number includes, we close it with greater than. Then the next line, we'll tap enter twice, and then we'll have using. We'll type using space, namespace, then we space again, and then std, and then semicolon. So why we did this? So this line will let us use standard commands like out and end line without repeating typing those std : cout or std : end line. After that, we tap enter twice again, then we begin our main method. So let's type int space main, and then parentheses, close and open parentheses, and then we press enter. So inside here, our main method, this is where we are going to put all our instructions that our devices will do while running the program. So let's open this by tap opening brace, and then press enter. As you can see it's already indented, so if there's some instances that it isn't, we just need to press tab. Now let's display a simple output statement based on the given problem from our lab X1. So let's use the command cout and its partner insertion operator. Then let's have our literal string, which should be inside the quote unquote. So as you can see, it automatically displayed quote unquote, so we simply just need to type something in it. So let's type the name of our school, Nueva Ecija University of Science and Technology. And then let's move our cursor at the end, and then another insertion operator, end line, and then semicolon. Now enter again. So next we need to print is our campus. So just like what we did earlier, let's type cout, insertion operator, quote unquote, and inside type sumakab campus. Then move the cursor to the end line. And then insertion operator, end line, and then let's put another end line, insertion operator, end line, and then semicolon. Now we are done in our output statement. We can now tap enter twice, and then we can type return space caps lock exit underscore caps lock success, and then semicolon to end our C++ program. Enter again, then move the cursor at the beginning of the line and align with the opening brace. Type the closing brace to close our main method. Then let's save our C++ program as lab x1. So let's run our program. And then our output statement appeared.
Now let's move to our next problem. So for the lab ex2, we should open the code for the lab ex1 and modify it by adding syntax that will ask the user to input last name, input first name, input middle initial, input address, input contact number, input birth year, and compute for the age based on the birth year, and display all the input data. In this problem, we are now going to have an input and output statement. Now let's analyze first the problem. As we can see, we need an input, and that means we need to declare back variables for the inputs. So now let's go back to the beginning of our main method, specifically at the line 8. So we have to input last name, and the data type for that would be string, for it has a series of letters. Let's type string space and ask the variable name for last name, comma, and then space. We also have the first name, so let's put fn, comma, space, mi for the middle initial. So we can use the data type char for the initial. However, there are instances that our users might have letters in as their middle name. So it is better to include middle initial in the data type string. Now, comma, space, and also for the address, let's type addr for the variable name, and then semicolon if there are no string inputs. Now, we have to put contact number. So contact number can be long, so for the data type, we can use long. But first, tap enter. Then type long, space, synum for contact number, and then semicolon. We also need to input the birth year, and for that, the data type we are using will be int, space, b year as the variable name. As for the G part, we need to compute for the age. So we need a variable name for age. So, comma, space, age as the variable name, and then semicolon. Lastly, to compute the age, we need to have a constant variable for the number we are using in order to compute for the age. So the formula would be the current year minus the birth year. So let's declare by typing const space int c year as the variable name, space, equals, space, 2023 m, and then lastly semicolon. Now let's move in our prompts. So after the sumakab campus, end line, tap enter twice, and then let's start now typing cout, insertion operator, quote unquote, and put it in our command to the user. Let's type input last name, colon, space, and there, unquote. Move the cursor at the end, and then never forget the semicolon, then enter. Next is to get the value of the last name, so type cin, extraction operator, ln, then comma. However, during our trials, in doing this activity, we found that here is an unusual result when the input has two words in it separated by spaces. And that occurs when using this syntax. So to solve this problem, we did some research on the internet and found out there is an alternative ways to solutionize this. So by using getLine function, this allows accepting and reading single and multiple line strings from the input stream. The function continues accepting inputs and appending them to the string until it encounters a delimiting character. Thus, you can use it to keep adding inputs for longer strings, and some primary applications of it includes the taking names and even details such as address. Now that we know what getLine function does, let's now apply it to our program. Let's type get line, open and close parentheses, and inside of it, we need to type cin, comma, space, the variable name for the last name, which is ln, and then that's it. Now move the cursor outside the parentheses, then put semicolon. Next, enter. Let's now print for the first name by typing cout, insertion operator, quote, input last name, colon, space, unquote, and then semicolon. Enter, then get line, open parentheses, cin, comma, space, fn, close, parentheses, and then semicolon. Enter. Again, let's do just like what we did from the previous ones. So, cout, insertion operator, quote, input middle initial, colon, space, unquote, and then semicolon. Enter. Get line, open parentheses, cin, comma, space, mi, close parentheses, and then semicolon. Next, enter cout, insertion operator, quote, input address, colon, space, unquote, semicolon, enter. Get line, open parentheses, cin, comma, space, eddr, close parentheses, and lastly, the semicolon. Again, cout, insertion operator, quote, input contact number, colon, space, unquote, semicolon, and then enter. Now, in here, we can just use our first cin in syntax. So, type cin, extraction operator, cnam as the variable name, and then semicolon. Enter. And that goes the same to this one. Cout, insertion operator, quote, input birth year, colon, space, unquote, semicolon, and then enter. Next, cin, extraction operator, year for the variable name, and lastly, the semicolon. So now, I want to have a separation for the inputs and what will going to be displayed later. So another enter, and type cout, insertion operator, end line, and semicolon. And that's how we can have a line space. Now let's move to the calculation, double enter. It is said in our problem that we need to compute for the age using the given birth year. So the formula for that would be age space equals space. Let's get the other constant value from earlier, which is the 2023. Then space plus symbol, space, the variable for birth year, which is B year. And lastly, the semicolon. Now let's move in the outputs. So tap enter twice. Proceed for the output statement. So let's type cout, insertion operator, quote, full name, colon, space, unquote, insertion operator, and then our variable name for the first name. In this statement, we are going to combine the inputs for the last name, first name, and the middle name. So fn, insertion operator, we put the variable name because the value that the user will input for the first name will be placed in that variable. So that goes the same for the next step we are going to do. So let's proceed. We need to have a space between those names. So let's type quote, space, and then unquote. Next, insertion operator. Again, mi for the middle initial. Insertion operator, quote, space, unquote. Again, the insertion operator. Then, ln for last name. And then, insertion operator again. And at the end is the end line and semicolon. Enter. Next, let's do the output for the address. So in the new line, type cout, insertion operator, quote, address, colon, space, and unquote. And then insertion operator, put the variable name of address, which is the ADDR. Then insertion operator, end line, and thus the semicolon. Enter. Now for the contact number, cout, insertion operator, quote, contact number, colon, space, unquote, insertion operator, TE, variable name for contact number, CNUM, insertion operator, end line, and then semicolon, and the enter. For birth year, cout, insertion operator, quote, birth year, colon, space, unquote, insertion operator, year, insertion operator, and the end line, and semicolon. And lastly, tap enter again. We still have one thing to output. So for the age, cout, insertion operator, quote, space, age, colon, space, unquote, insertion operator, age for the variable name. So the value in here will be the calculation that we made earlier. And then insertion operator, end line, insertion operator, and end line again, and lastly, the semicolon. Let's save this C++ program as LabEx2. Now let's run our program and then input my last name, Domingo. Now my first name, Miko. Then enter again, my middle initial, D. Then enter. So let's put my address, San Isidro, Nueva Ecija. Enter my contact number, 09-266-250-224. Enter, and then my birth year, which is 2005. And then enter again. So, thank you.
Hello guys, let's continue our program. Now, we are the third activity, which is the laboratory exercise number 3. So for this problem, open the code for LabEx2 and modify it by adding syntax to apply if statement at will. Ask the user to input a letter. The program will be checked. If the input is S, it will display scholar. So let's open LabEx2. So we are just going to modify it and add syntax that will applying if statement. Now let's start by declaring variable. As what in our problem says, we will ask the user to input a letter. So in our variable declaration section, let's put a variable name for the letter. And for the data type, let's make a new line first, then char. Because the input is only a single letter, space, the letter for variable name, then semicolon. We don't anything to declare, so we are done in this part.
Now, let's put a prompt first for inputting a letter. So, after the cin insert extraction operator year, let's add another line. So, let's type cout, insertion operator, code, input a letter, colon, space, unquote, and then semicolon, and then enter. Let's type cin extraction operator, and then letter, and then last is the semicolon.
So let's proceed the if statement. So at the last section of our program, then create new line, then type if space. And now for our comparison expression, if the user will put S, then will display remarks. However, if the user input a small or a big letter S, so in that case we are going to have a two option inside our comparison expression. We are going to use Boolean operator. So let's type open parenthesis, letter, space, equals, apostrophe, because it is a char, then capital letter S, apostrophe, to close it, next space, OR, operator or a double bar sign, is our Boolean operator, then space. Now, here is the other option for small letter. So letter, space, equal, space, apostrophe again, then close parenthesis. Now enter the tab. So let's now print the result. So see out, insertion operator, quote, remarks, colon, space, scholar, unquote, and then insertion operator, end line, insertion operator, end line, and lastly the semicolon. Now let's run our program and then put my last name, Martin. Now my first name, Jan Christian Harry. Then enter again my middle name, DC, period, then enter. So let's put my address, Castellanos, Leonardo, Nueva, my contact number, 0926 451 4866, and then enter my birth year, which is 2005, and then enter again. So let's put S and enter. So as we can see, it's display my remark as a scholar.
Hello guys. Now let's do laboratory exercise number 4. Open the code for lab X3 and modify it by adding syntax to apply if-else statement that will ask the user to input the sex. The program will identify if it's a male or female. In this problem, we are using the if-else statement, so let's proceed in coding. First thing we need to do is to declare variable. It says that the user should input their sex, whether they are male or female. So we must have a variable for sex. Let's go in our variable declaration section to add the variable for sex. So the user only just need to put M for male or F for female. So we are using car data type. Let's just put it alongside the letter. Erase the semicolon and the comma, space, sex, and then semicolon. And now we are done in declaring variable. Now let's put an input statement that will ask the user to put their sex. So let's put it after the letter. input statement, make a new line, and then cout, insertion operator, quote, input sex, colon, space, unquote, and then semicolon. Tap enter. Now let's type cin, extraction operator, the variable name for sex, which is all sex also, and then semicolon, and we are in the input statement. Let's proceed in doing the if else statement. So after our if statement for remarks earlier, let's put the if else statement after that. Enter to make the separation between those two. Now type if, and for our comparison expression, space, open parentheses, sex, space, equal, space, apostrophe, big F, then close it with apostrophe, and then space. Now let's put another option for the lowercase. The lowercase f. So let's put or operation, that double bar sign, and then space, sex, space, equals, apostrophe, lowercase f, and then apostrophe, and then close parenthesis, tap enter, and then tab. Now let's do the output statement for our first comparison expression. Cout, insertion operator, quote, sex, colon, space, sex, and then unquote. Insertion operator, end line, and then semicolon. Tap enter, and then tab. Now let's make a comparison expression for male. So type else space if space open parentheses sex space equals apostrophe uppercase M, and then apostrophe space or operator space sex space equals lowercase m apostrophe, and then close parentheses. The tap enter, and then tab. Now let's put cout, insertion operator, quote, sex, colon, space, male, unquote, and then insertion operator, and then end line. Insertion operator, end line, and lastly, semicolon. Now let's run our program and then input my last name, which is Pablo, then enter. Now my first name, Lorenz, then enter again. Now my middle initial, which is Victory, then Tuldok, then enter. So let's put my address, Mambanglan, San Bernardo, Nueva Ecija, enter. contact number 09318576 enter, then my birthday, which is 2005, and then enter again. So let's put S and enter again. Then now for my sex, M and enter, and that's it. My sex appear as male. Thank you.
Now, let's continue our program for the laboratory exercise number 5. So for this exercise, we have to open the code for the lab X4 and modify it by adding syntax to apply the nested if-else statements that will input the attendance score, seatwork score, recitation score, quiz score, laboratory exercises score, and term exam score. After the inputs, we are tasked to compute for the following: for attendance 10%, seatworks 15%, recitations 10%, quizzes 20%, laboratory exercises 25%, and term exam for 20%. And then we also have to compute for the total percentage and convert the total percentage using this range. And then print the corresponding grade. And then let's start continuing our program. So first thing we need to do is to declare variables. So for the scores, the data type we'll be using is int, as well as for the total percentage. So let's include this at the section of our declaring variable at the beginning. So, and then let's add it in the int line along with the age. So remove the semicolon and replace it with comma, and then space, and then let's type attendance, comma, space, seat work, comma, space, recitation, comma, space, quiz, comma, space, lab, comma, space, exam, comma, space, and for the total percentage, let's type total P, and then semicolon. Now let's go back at the end and let's start with our prompts. But first, let's make an endline between our previous code to the new one, so that the next thing that will be printed will have a separation. So let's press enter, and then cout, insertion operator, end line, and then semicolon, and then enter twice. So now let's go with printing our input attendance score, for example. So then cout, insertion operator, quote, input attendance score, colon, space, and then unquote. And never forget the semicolon, and then enter. Next, cin, extraction operator, attendance, and then semicolon. Now enter again. So type cout, insertion operator, quote, input seatworks score, and then colon, space, unquote, and then semicolon, and then enter. Let's type cin, extraction operator, seatwork, and then semicolon. Now enter, type cout, insertion operator, quote, input recitation score, colon, space, unquote, and then semicolon. Now enter, and then cin, extraction operator, recitation, and then semicolon. Now enter again, and then cout, insertion operator, quote, input quizzes score, and then colon, space, and quote, and then never forget the semicolon. Now enter, type cin, extraction operator, quiz, and then semicolon. Now enter, type cout, insertion operator, code, input laboratory exercises score, and then colon, space, and code. Never forget this semicolon. Now enter, type cin, extraction operator, lab, and then semicolon. Enter again, and then cout, insertion operator, code, input term exam score, and then colon, space, and code, and then the semicolon. Now enter, type cin, extraction operator, exam, semicolon, and then enter. So let's put end line at the end so that the next thing that will be printed should have a separation. So enter and then cout, insertion operator, end line, and then semicolon. Now let's do the computation for the corresponding percentage of the scores and the total percentage. So let's do first for the scores. We have to make a new variable names for each percentage, so let's do it first. So back to the top, let's add double as data type, and then space, AP for attendance percentage, comma, space, SP for seat work, comma, space, RP for recitation, comma, space, QP for quiz, comma, space, LP for laboratory exercise percentage, and then comma, space, EP for exam, and then semicolon. Now let's back again at the end of our program, and then enter now, so that it would have a separation. And now for the formula, it would be, for example, AP equals attendance times the conversion of percent to decimal. So for 10%, it will be 0.10. So let's continue. So let's type AP space equals space attendance space asterisk space 0.10, and then semicolon. Enter. SP space equals space seat work asterisk, or space rather, and then asterisk, then space 0.15, and then semicolon. Now enter for the recitation. RP space equals space recitation space asterisk space 0.10, and then semicolon. Next, enter. QP for quiz, and then space equals space quiz space asterisk space 0.20, and then semicolon. Now enter, and then LP for lab, and then space equals space lab space asterisk space 0.25, and then semicolon again. Then next, enter. EP for exam, and then space equals space exam space asterisk space 0.20, and then lastly the semicolon. Now enter twice, and now let's do the computation for the total percentage. So the formula for that would be the addition of our previous computations. So just type total P space equals space AP space plus space SP space plus RP plus or space, and then plus QP space plus space LP space plus space EP, and then semicolon. Now enter twice again, and then we're done now with the computation. So after we enter twice, let's print the total percentage. So to do that, let's type cout, insertion operator, quote, total percentage, colon, space, unquote, and then insertion operator, and then total P. So, and next, insertion operator, and then end line. Lastly, the semicolon. The next thing we need to do is the nested if else statements. So it says in the problem that we need to convert the total percentage and print its corresponding grade. Now then, let's start if the total percentage is 98 to 100. So type if space open parenthesis total P space greater than or equal space 98, and then close parenthesis, enter. Now tab, and then print the grade. So cout, insertion operator, code, grade, colon, space 1.00, and then unquote, insertion operator, end line, and then semicolon. So if the total percentage is 98 to 100, it will print the grade as 1.00 or 1. So tap enter again, and then tab. So if the percentage is 95 to 97, let's type else space if space open parenthesis total P space greater than or equal space 95, close parenthesis, and then enter. Tab again, and then cout, insertion operator, code, grade, colon, space 1.25, and then unquote, insertion operator, end line, and then semicolon. Now enter, then tab again. For the converted grade of 92 to 94, it should be 1.50. So let's type else space if space open parenthesis total P space greater than or equal space 92. So let's put close parenthesis, enter and tab. So cout, insertion operator, code, grade, colon, space 1.50, then unquote, insertion operator and end line, and then semicolon. Enter and tab, then else space if space open parenthesis total P. So now if the percentage is 89 to 91, it should be 1.75. So space, and then greater than or equal, space, 89, and then close parenthesis. Now tap enter and tab again. So C out, insertion operator, quote, grade, colon, space, 1.75, and then quote, insertion operator and end line, and then semicolon. Now for the 85 to 88, the converted grade is 2 or 2.00. So let's enter and tab again, and then type else, space, if, space, open parenthesis, total P, space, greater than or equal, space, 85, and then close parenthesis, then enter. Tab again and print C out, insertion operator, quote, grade, colon, space, 2.00, and then unquote, and then insertion operator and end line, and then semicolon. So now tap enter and then tab. So for 82 to 84, the converted grade is 2.25. So let's type else, space, if, space, open parenthesis, total P, space, greater than or equal, space, 82, and then close parenthesis, and then enter and tab. So C out, insertion operator, quote, grade, colon, space, 2.25, unquote, and then insertion operator, end line, and then semicolon. Now enter and then tab. So for 80 to 81, the converted grade is 2.50. So let's type else, space, if, space, open parenthesis, total P, space, greater than or equal, space, 80, and then close parenthesis. Now tap enter and tab, and then C out, insertion operator, quote, grade, colon, space, 2.50, and then unquote, insertion operator and end line, and then semicolon. Now enter and tab, and let's do for the 77 to 79. The grade is 2.75, so let's type else, space, if, space, open parenthesis, total P, space, greater than or equal, space, 77, and then close parenthesis. Now tap enter and tab again, and then C out, insertion operator, quote, grade, colon, space, 2.75, and then unquote, and then insertion operator and end line, then semicolon. Tap enter and tab again. And for 75 to 76, the grade is 3 or 3.00. So let's type else, space, if, space, open parenthesis, total P, space, greater than or equal, space, 75, and then close parenthesis. Tap enter and tab, and then C out, insertion operator, quote, grade, colon, space, 3.00, and then unquote, insertion operator, end line, and then semicolon. And lastly, if the total percentage is below 75, the grade will be 5.00 or 5. So let's tap enter and tab once again, and then else. We don't need to make any comparison expression here, so here, because it's already understood that if it is 75 or below, it will not answer the previous comparison expression. So enter and tab again, and then cout, insertion operator, quote, grade, colon, space, 5.00, and then unquote, insertion operator, end line, and then semicolon. And now we're done, so let's run our program. So let's input my last name first, Parungao, and then enter. My first name, John Nelson, enter. To my middle initial, L, and then enter. To my address, San Isidro, Nueva Ecija. Then enter my contact number, 09, and then enter. So for my birth year is 2005. Then enter. Input a letter, so let's put S. And then input sex, M. So let's enter, and my information appeared. So as well as to input attendance score. So let's put 96. Enter. Seat work 97. Recitation 98. Quizzes 99. Laboratory exercises 98. Term exam 97. And enter. So the total percentage is 97, and the corresponding grade is 1.25. So now let's save our activity as, or our exercise as love x 5. So, and that's it. Now let's continue for the laboratory exercise number 6. For this exercise, open the code for lab x5 and modify it by adding syntax to apply switch statements that will convert the grade using this range and print the corresponding interpretation. So let's now start, but first, make a cout, insertion operator, end line, then semicolon, so that the next thing that will be printed will not stick after the line of the previous one, and then enter twice. So let's do the switch statement. So the variable that will be evaluated is the total p, and we must have the different cases that are defined based on its value, depending on the value of total p. So let's type first the switch, space, open parenthesis, total p, and then close parenthesis. Then enter, and then open it with opening brace. Tap enter and tab. So if the total p is 199 or 98, it must print with highest honor. So to do that, let's type case space 100 colon space case space 99 colon space case space 98 colon. And after that, now if the value of the total is matched in one of these cases, we need to print. So enter and tab, and then first, then type cout, insertion operator, quote, with highest honor, and then unquote, and then semicolon. Then enter, type break, and then semicolon to break the switch block or stop the execution. So now enter and then backspace to align the next case with the previous one. Then let's do for the 97, 96, and 95. So type case space 97 colon space case 96 colon space case 95 then colon. Now then enter and tab. For their corresponding interpretation, let's type cout insertion operator code with high honor and then unquote and then semicolon. So after that, enter and then type break and then semicolon. So enter and backspace and then do for the 92, 93, and 94. So the corresponding interpretation is with honor. So let's type case space 94 colon space case space 93 colon space case space 92 colon and then enter. So tab and then let's type cout insertion operator and then code with honor uncode and then semicolon, then enter and break semicolon. Lastly, if the total P doesn't match any of the specified cases not in the range of the 92 to 100, it will print study harder as a default case. So to do that, let's enter and then backspace, type default and then semicolon, then enter and tab and then cout insertion operator code study harder with 3 dots and then uncode and then semicolon. After that, enter and then backspace twice to align at the first opening brace of the switch statement, then put closing brace. And now we're done, so let's run our program. So now let's run our program. So for my last name, Parungao, enter. First name, John Nelson, enter. And then middle initial, L, enter. For my address, San Isidro, Nueva Ecija, enter. Contact number, enter. For my birth year is 2005 and then enter. For letter, let's input S, and for sex, M, and then that's my information. So for attendance score, let's put 95, enter. For seat work, let's put 94. For recitation, let's put 93. Enter. 92 for quizzes. For laboratory exercises, 95. Enter. For term exam, 97. And then let's check. So for the total percentage, it's 94. And for the corresponding grade, it's 1.5. And it says that I am with honor. So our program is successful. So thanks for watching.